At dawn, the farmer screamed so loud the whole village heard. His wife rushed in, his hands were swelling, the skin red and cracked like burning wood. She tried to cool them with water, but he thrashed in pain, begging her to stop. By noon his fingers turned black and stiff. The priest came, held up a cross, and said it was the fire from God. But the bread on their table told a different story, its crust already blackened with death. Across medieval Europe, rye bread was the food of survival. For peasants, it was life itself, until the summer when the grain turned black. A fungus called ergot grew on wet rye, filling every loaf with invisible poison. No one saw it coming. People ate, prayed, and waited for the pain to end. But the more they ate, the more their bodies burned. The church called it divine punishment. Science wouldn't find the truth for hundreds of years. The first great outbreak struck in France and the German lands. Whole villages collapsed into chaos. Men and women screamed as their hands blackened and fell apart. Livestock died. Babies were stillborn. Priests called for processions, waving crosses through the smoke, begging God to stop the burning. But nothing stopped. In some towns, the dead outnumbered the living, and still, the ovens never went cold. By the 11th century, the disease had a name: the fire of Street Anthony. People believed a Christian hermit, Street Anthony, could heal the cursed. Monks founded hospitals where victims screamed through the night as their limbs rotted away. Those who survived often lost hands, feet, or reason. The monks prayed over them, but they never understood the cause. To them, the fire was wholly sent by God, cured only through faith. The Antonine monks became legends. They wore black robes marked with a blue T, the symbol of the saint. They gave the sick meat instead of bread, believing it was divine guidance. In truth, it saved thousands. Meat contained no fungus, and the patients slowly healed. Without knowing it, the monks had stumbled on the first treatment for ergot poisoning simply by avoiding the grain that caused it. To the church, the answer was simple: sin. They preached that the burning flesh was proof of corruption, that pain was cleansing the soul. Villagers knelt before altars, begging forgiveness for crimes they never committed. The sicker they became, the harder they prayed. Those who died were said to be purified. But the ones who survived carried scars that told another story, not of grace, but of poison no prayer could wash away. Whispers spread faster than the plague. People said witches had cursed the harvest, or that demons walked the fields at night. Women who baked the bread were accused of feeding Satan's fire. Trials began. Torches burned. Some confessed under torture, others simply vanished. But the bread kept killing. No witch, no spell, only the same black grain that no one dared to question. Medieval doctors tried everything. They drained blood, applied leeches, burned herbs to chase out evil vapors. Nothing worked. Some even cut off limbs to stop the burning from spreading, only to watch the patients die screaming. For centuries, medicine circled the truth but never touched it. Because no one thought to blame the one thing everyone trusted most: bread. In Antonine hospitals, monks noticed something strange. The patients who refused bread and ate only meat began to heal. They called it God's mercy, never realizing they had stumbled onto the cure. Those who still ate the holy grain kept dying. For every miracle the church proclaimed, it was simple biology at work. They had no science, only blind faith and luck. For centuries, ergot returned again and again, a silent stalker in the fields. In France, Germany, England, the same story repeated. Rainy summers, hungry winters, and the bread that burned people alive. No one knew its name, yet everyone feared the symptoms. And as Europe prayed for deliverance, the real killer kept growing quietly in their fields, waiting for the next harvest. The truth hid in plain sight. The killer wasn't in the sky or the soul, it was in the fields. The fungus Claviceps purpurea thrived on damp rye, spreading tiny black growths that blended with the grain. When ground into flour, the poison became invisible. It slipped into every loaf, every meal, every prayer. The very thing that gave life was quietly taking it away, bite by bite. The poison attacked blood vessels, cutting off circulation until limbs died. Victims felt fire beneath their skin, their fingers blackened, their feet crumbled away. Others went mad, hallucinating angels, beasts, and fire raining from heaven. It was one disease with two faces: burning and madness. Neither left survivors whole. In 944, the worst outbreak struck France. More than 40,000 people died, burned, twisted, or insane. Villages turned to ash. Chroniclers wrote that people were eaten by invisible flames. No one could explain how it spread so fast, or why prayer no longer worked. The church bells tolled for months, not for sinners, but for the starved, the innocent, and the damned. Many victims were children. They had eaten the most bread, it was all they had. Parents carried them to the Antonine hospitals, only to watch their small limbs darken and fall away. Some children lived, but never walked again. Monks called them the Blessed of Street Anthony. Their cries became prayers that no one forgot. For hundreds of years, no one saw the pattern. Famine followed rain, and rain brought the fungus. Every generation blamed sin, witches, or God's wrath, anything but nature. The truth lay in the soil, invisible to the naked eye. Europe lived and died by bread, never realizing it carried both life and death in every grain. In Antonine hospitals, monks gave their patients only meat, wine, and clean water. They called it divine instruction, a holy diet sent by Street Anthony himself. But it was simple luck. Rye was banned from their tables, and with it, the poison. The miracle cures became famous across Europe. People traveled for weeks to be healed by faith, never knowing they were saved by hunger for bread they didn't eat. By the 17th century, physicians began to question the old beliefs. They noticed outbreaks always followed wet summers, and always where rye was grown. Some scholars even wrote that the poison lies in the grain, but no one believed them. It would take centuries more before the microscope revealed the truth. The invisible fungus that turned Europe's daily bread into a slow-burning plague. In 1938, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann studied the same fungus that once burned medieval peasants alive. From ergot, he created a chemical that would change the modern world: LSD. The same poison that drove peasants mad now opened the doors of the human mind. The line between medicine and madness had never been thinner. By the 20th century, ergotism had nearly vanished. Better farming, clean grain, and science ended the burning that had haunted Europe for 1,000 years. But in old villages, people still whispered about the fire of God. To them, it wasn't science, it was a curse that faded when faith returned. The legend survived long after the disease was gone. They prayed to heaven for mercy. They burned witches, buried children, and begged for miracles. But the fire that consumed them was never divine. It grew from their own soil, a fungus, a mistake, a mystery they couldn't see. And for 1,000 years, Europe worshipped its own poison, calling it holy.